Standardized testing has been used as a means of evaluation in the U.S. education system for years. Recently, it has been questioned just how effective these tests are in measuring knowledge as well as teachers. This video is a collective of public opinions from Northern Michigan University students, staff, and faculty responding to the question, how effective do you think standardized testing has been on education?
Well, it depends. It's a good evaluation when it's used correctly, and when it's used to evaluate the right thing, and as a tool to further learning. But it also has potential to be used in the wrong way, and often is. So it's for specific things, like you can evaluate a student's math level, and that's as far as it goes. I don't think it should be used to evaluate teachers. Progress it ignores a lot of other factors, such as the home life of the student, or demographics, all of that stuff, and where they're going with that in sort of evaluating teachers on the class progress is I don't think that's appropriate. But I like standardized testing for for certain things. It does gather some information about students. So that's it.
Awesome.
I don't think standardized testing is a good way to measure how much someone has learned. It's a way to measure how much someone has memorized. And with the 4 or 5 answer choices, I don't feel that you can get an accurate representation of what a student knows.
Standardized testing on my education has been a huge part. Obviously, it's started all the way back when we were little kids in elementary school. I think it kind of sets a different tone for how you study. If you find out it's going to be a multiple choice kind of a question, you study differently. So I'd say it has an effect on how I would be looking at my tests, quizzes, my material, and it definitely has changed the way from, like, say, a math class, it's all problem solving, where you actually have to do the work. There's no, maybe I'll get it right 1 out of 4. So I think that would probably be the best thing.
I don't think that standardized testing is appropriate in education, because too many of the questions are biased towards the European concept, and it doesn't address a lot of minority issues. And so I think it's unfair, and it's biased against minority peoples. You don't see yourself reflected in the questions. You don't see yourself reflected in the answers. Your answers might not fit with what mainstream has to offer. Can I give an example?
Yeah.
Absolutely. The tribal peoples out maybe in Nevada or such, the standard question on a test asks a child, where do you see a boat? And the answer, which you would normally think would be on the water, on the lake, something or another. Well, if they live near a lake, but not by the lake, it's in the distance from them, their answer might not be that they would see the boat on the lake, but they would see it, one of the choices, being pulled behind a car. And that, for them, is the correct answer, because it is being pulled behind the car. They never see them on the lake. They just see them going by on the highway. So it's kind of biased against them. And it could be other students as well who might answer a question that way, based on what they do observe in the world around them. And a lot of questions, like I said, you never see yourself reflected in the tests, even by people's names. You always see Susie and Johnny, and you don't see unique or maybe not unique to the people who have them, of course, but questions to Shaniqua or to Jose or something. You don't see their names reflected in the questions.
I think standardized testing has had no effect on my education in the long term. It has, in my opinion, merely been a means for me to move on to the next step, whatever that was, either in middle school or high school. And my SAT scores were kind of average, but it didn't really affect, my future at all. So.
I would say definitely a huge factor, only because it puts you in different classes as well. Like, some testing isn't really relevant, but other testing for, like, even the math education courses that I've taken, depending on what your test results are would depend on what class you get into. So I guess it really depends on what kind of standardized testing.
Okay.
I did pretty well on the standardized tests, so I think that they're a good thing, but I do know a lot of people who in my opinion, are smarter than me, and they did worse on standardized tests than I have. So I don't know how accurate they are, but I think it's a decent indicator on how smart someone is.
To be honest, I'm a very good test taker. I test very well. So personally, it's been beneficial as far as like getting money for stuff. But as far as actually benefiting my education, I don't think so. I don't think it's a gauge of whether I know things or not, really. I mean, like, I don't think that the test questions necessarily judge whether or not I know a subject, because I've tested very well on subjects that I felt relatively uncomfortable with still. So I don't think it's a good judge.
I don't think it's a good judge either, because it's only one type of educational parameter. And so you can be book savvy and pass those tests and be really good at that, then you're put into a situation, then you don't know what to do. And that happens especially in fields like medicine. And so you have nurses or other professionals who get out into the field and they might be able to do great on the books, but then they can't deal with real life.
I'm kind of in between. I think that it has its benefits, like in our nursing stuff, it's good because...
I mean, you do need to know the theoretical part of it. I mean, like, it's not like you don't need to know it, it's just that's not all of it.
Right, so we get the theory part, and then we get our clinical part, so that type
So
of
ours is
testing
effective,
does
but
that.
yeah.
So it does a little bit of both. I think it's good in some aspects. It's not everything.
I think standardized testing is really based off of the person. Like, I don't think it's necessarily the best option for schools because a lot of people learn in different ways. So I really think that there's a lot of people that learn if you vocally explain things to them, or have them draw and depict pictures, or have them fill in the blanks. Like, it all really, I guess, depends on the person, and that's where education has to focus on, is what's best for the students, because we are all.
I think standardized testing has been pretty effective. Like, for myself, I have not done poorly on tests, but I know that others who usually do really good in school probably have done poorly on tests just because of nerves. Some people aren't good test takers, and that plays a huge role in determining, like, how smart they are. Oh, this is their grade on the test. And it has nothing to do with, like shows potential. Like, testing is just, what is the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I just, in my final opinion is, I don't think standardized testing really is effective. It gives you, like, a outlook at how smart people actually are, but overall, I don't think it's really good.
So I think that standardized testing is good as long as it's specialized. For instance, I think the specialized GRE tests that we have to take in order to go to grad school are a good idea. They literally just test raw information. I don't think that they're useful if people who are going to specialized courses have to be tested on, subjects they aren't familiar with and they won't be using. So a physics major shouldn't be tested on Beowulf. And, a literature major shouldn't be tested on quantum physics. But specialized courses are good, and I think they're valid. And I think they force us to be rigorous.
Cool.
As a instructor, professor, never have I seen a standardized test that actually measured someone's ability to perform well, or in the classroom, or in real life. That standardized tests don't really mimic or model the way people need to interact in their careers and in the classroom. So I understand that when you've got lots of people, it's a great way to assess a very generic baseline level of knowledge, but in the long run, it doesn't assess a person's ability to be successful.
Standardized testing is definitely not an effective means of evaluating and our progress as we go through the education system. I think it's horrible because, especially with the time limit, some people are just not as fast but can understand the information and know it, and some people are a little behind or a little ahead, and it's just really unfair. I think it's horrible. I think I literally had the worst day of my life as the ACT, and you're not prepared for it. You really don't have a clue what they're going to ask, and the stuff they ask is either completely irrelevant, and you do well in subjects that are awful and have nothing to do with what you want to do, and I just think they're awful. Or no, answer's no.
I do not. I think that everybody learns at a different rate, and I think that in order for education to be 100% successful, we have to accommodate different learning styles. I don't see that fully provided for in the current educational approach.
Oh man, I think everyone's different, so people remember different facts differently, and so standardized test probably doesn't pick all that information up properly.
Because I know from my point of view, I can study all day long, all week long. As soon as I go and take a test, I blank out, basically. So, no, I don't think it is because, like, you know the information, but just sit down and have to do, like, some kind of multiple choice or whatever doesn't really evaluate what you know of the subject. Because I can walk out after the test and be like, oh, why didn't I say that? Or why didn't I put that answer? So, yeah, no.
I personally do not. I think people learn in different ways, and all those ways should be accommodated. I just don't think it's a good evaluation at all.
I'd say no. Do I have to explain why?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I think that people learn in very different ways, and having like one set of like questions can really diminish the value of learning for certain people.
I think it can be if used in the right context. A lot of subject matter, I think, cannot be tested that way, especially with the added English writing parts to SATs. I think that's a very, I guess, subjective type of thing to evaluate, and standardized testing is very objective, and along with the different people's learning styles and how they retain information. If you use it properly, it can be, but generally the way we have it in the U.S., I don't think it is.
I think that it has its pros and cons for evaluation because, yes, it can be a useful tool, and working with high schools and college students like I do, I can see the benefits to it, but I also think that you risk a lot of, I think you risk a lot of curriculum by doing that, because sometimes you'll see the teachers in the schools will be teaching to the test when there's so much more for the students to learn than just what's on the test. So I think sometimes you miss out on a lot of things when they're just basing everything on the test. We have to get these students to pass. We have to get them to learn this material. And you're teaching them to pass the test, but you're not really teaching them to think always on a bigger, higher level. So I don't know. It's like a tough question to answer. I think that you could argue both sides of it. So.
Yes, it plays a role. It's probably not the only thing that we should be using. So I think that standardized testing can be used to measure a number of important things, but there is no measure in standardized testing of a student's determination, a student's dependability and conscientiousness, and other really important things that contribute to student success in the workplace and in graduate school later on.
No, because I think there's multiple different kinds of intelligences, and to rate everyone on the same scale is faulty from the start. Additionally, various regional changes in intellect are common, especially across America, so trying to make everyone fit under one kind of form of intelligence is stupid.
No, I think you do need to look at the progress of the student throughout the semester and how much they learn, how do they learn it, and you cannot evaluate what the student knows just by test.
It does suck because you have English high school teachers who can't teach their kids so much how to write because they're trying to squeeze in all this content, so the style's lost. So kids, for example, in English classes in high school, get to college and then they don't know how to write, and then college professors then have to teach them things that they're supposed to learn in high school. And then you have pressure that's bad for a lot of high school students because it limits their college choices if they're not necessarily good test takers. That's not taken into account a lot of the time. So current system, I think, is not the best that it could be. I think that's all I got to say.
standardized testing is a small part of the education system. We need to have a way to evaluate what's being learned and have goals and standards for teachers. But there's other pieces that are very much a part of the educational system, and that's curriculum, parents' involvement, pre-testing and making sure that students learn their skills, kind of assuming as they go along if they haven't learned those. And for me, I think that would be abolishing the grading system and just having a checkoff list of things that are learned. Once skills are learned and we know that they've got them, and they can go on to the next thing.